Why does consciousness exist at all? Imagine waking up tomorrow with a strange new ability. You can see, hear, touch, taste, and remember everything normally. You can solve problems, you can recognize people, you can speak, you can drive a car, you can even tell someone perfectly accurately that you are happy or afraid. But there is one difference. There is nobody home. Your body behaves exactly as it did yesterday, but there is no inner experience behind it. No feeling of warmth from sunlight on your skin, no taste when you drink coffee, no private voice in your head, no sense that the world is happening to you. From the outside, almost nothing would seem wrong. And that is the strange part. Why does experience exist in the first place? Why isn't the universe simply full of complicated machines that react to light, sound, chemicals, pain, and pleasure without ever actually experiencing any of it? A tree reacts to sunlight. A thermostat reacts to temperature. A computer processes information. A human being does all of these things, but apparently something else happens inside us. There is something it is like to be alive. There is something it is like to see red. There is something it is like to feel embarrassed, hear music, remember childhood, fall in love, or suddenly realize that you exist. And as far as we know, the universe did not have to contain any of this. Stars could have formed without feelings. Galaxies could have collided without anyone watching. Planets could have spun through empty space for billions of years without a single moment of experience. Then somehow, matter became organized into creatures that could look at the universe and wonder why anything is happening at all. That is one of the deepest mysteries we have. Not merely how does consciousness work, but something more unsettling. Why is there an experience to explain? The universe could have been completely dark inside. There is an important distinction between behavior and experience. Suppose you build a robot that walks into a room. It has cameras, sensors, a processor. It detects an obstacle and moves around it. If you shine a bright light into its camera, it says, "That's too bright." You might eventually make the robot extremely sophisticated. It could describe colors. It could recognize faces. It could tell jokes. It could complain about pain. It could even say, "I am conscious." But there is still a question you cannot answer simply by watching its behavior. Is anybody actually experiencing anything inside? Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. This is the basic difficulty of consciousness. Science is extraordinarily good at studying things that can be measured from the outside. We can measure electrical activity in the brain. Right? We can observe changes in behavior. We can map brain regions. We can study what happens when certain areas are damaged or stimulated. All of this tells us a great deal. But the experience itself is private. You can measure my brain while I look at the color red. You can measure patterns of electrical activity. You can examine which neurons become active. You can ask me what I see. But none of those measurements literally contain the redness I experience. You experience your own consciousness directly. Everything else is inference. This creates a strange situation. The one thing you know with absolute immediacy is that experience exists. Yet the mechanism producing that experience remains deeply mysterious. You can doubt the existence of the external world. You can wonder whether other people are conscious. You can question whether your memories are accurate. But you cannot seriously doubt that something is being experienced right now. Even doubting requires an experience of doubt. Consciousness is the one mystery you cannot step completely outside of to investigate, and perhaps that is why it is so difficult. The brain seems to be made of the wrong kind of stuff. Your brain is made of matter. That sounds obvious. It is made of cells, proteins, chemicals, electrical signals, blood vessels, fats, water, and countless other physical components. None of these things taken individually appears to have an inner life. A neuron does not seem to sit in the brain thinking, "I wonder what it feels like to be a neuron." A molecule of dopamine does not experience happiness. A sodium ion does not feel curious. A collection of atoms does not obviously contain a tiny theater where colors and sounds appear. Yet, when enough of these physical components are arranged into a human brain, something astonishing seems to happen. Experience appears. You see a sunset, you feel pain, you hear a song, you remember your mother, you become frightened by something that has not happened yet. You imagine a place you have never visited. You think about your own thoughts. The same basic ingredients that existed in rocks and stars eventually became part of a system capable of asking questions about rocks and stars. This is sometimes described as an emergence problem, but emergence can hide the mystery rather than solve it. We know that complicated things can emerge from simpler things. Wetness emerges from interactions among enormous numbers of molecules. A traffic jam emerges from many cars following simple rules. A hurricane emerges from atmospheric conditions. Life emerges from chemistry, but consciousness seems different. We can understand why a large collection of molecules produces the physical property we call wetness. We can describe the molecules and their relationships. But suppose you had a perfect description of every physical event inside a brain. Would you automatically understand why those events produce the feeling of being alive? That is the hard part. Imagine someone who has never experienced color. You explain wavelengths of light. You explain the retina. You explain the visual cortex. You explain how different neurons respond to different frequencies. You give them every physical fact about color perception. Then they suddenly see red for the first time. Did they learn something new? Many philosophers have argued that they did. They learned what red feels like. This thought experiment is associated with philosopher Frank Jackson's famous knowledge argument involving a hypothetical scientist named Mary who knows everything physically knowable about color vision but has never experienced color. The argument does not prove that consciousness is non-physical. There are serious objections to it, but it reveals the central puzzle. There appears to be a difference between knowing everything about an experience from the outside and actually having the experience, and that difference is difficult to explain. The strange fact that pain hurts. Consider pain. From a biological perspective, pain is useful. If you touch a hot stove, nerves detect damage or potential damage. Signals travel through the nervous system. Your brain processes them. Your muscles move your hand away. That makes sense. Evolution has an obvious reason to create systems that protect the body. But now ask a stranger question. Why does the signal have to hurt? Why couldn't the brain simply register? Open quote, danger detected, move hand. Close quote. Why must danger come with an unpleasant inner experience? Perhaps the feeling of pain is part of the information processing system itself. Perhaps consciousness is inseparable from the way the brain integrates information. Perhaps the distinction between information processing and experience is artificial. Or perhaps pain contains something that our current physical theories do not yet explain. There is an important caution here. Saying we don't know why pain feels like pain does not mean science has failed to explain pain. Neuroscience can explain enormous amounts about pain. We understand receptors, pathways, brain regions, neurotransmitters, attention, expectation, learning, and many of the processes involved in pain. The mystery is narrower. It is the mystery of subjective experience itself. Why should any of those physical processes have an inner side? That question is sometimes called the hard problem of consciousness, a term associated with philosopher David Chalmers. The easy problems are not necessarily easy in practice. They can be extraordinarily difficult. How does the brain distinguish colors? How does it control behavior? How does it store information? How does attention work? How does the brain recognize objects? How does it report its internal state? These are hard scientific problems, but they are different from asking why any of these processes are accompanied by experience at all. That is the strange gap. Maybe consciousness is not something the brain produces. One possibility is that we have been asking the question incorrectly. Maybe consciousness is not something matter creates. Maybe consciousness is something matter organizes. There is a subtle difference. Imagine a whirlpool. A whirlpool is real, but you will not find a tiny whirlpool particle floating inside the water. The whirlpool exists because of the way water is arranged and moving. Its existence depends on relationships and patterns. Perhaps consciousness works somewhat like this. There may be nothing inside the brain that is individually conscious. Instead, consciousness could be a property of a particular kind of organized activity. On this view, asking which neuron is conscious would be like asking which molecule is the traffic jam. No single molecule is the traffic jam. The traffic jam exists at the level of the system. This is one reason many scientists and philosophers take emergent theories seriously. The brain is not just a pile of neurons, it is an incredibly interconnected dynamic system. Information moves through it. Different regions communicate. Sensory information interacts with memory. Memory interacts with expectations. Attention changes what becomes prominent. Emotions change perception. The brain constantly predicts what is happening and compares those predictions with incoming information. The conscious experience may be what this enormous process looks like from the inside. That last phrase is important. Looks like from the inside. Because perhaps consciousness is not another object in the brain. Perhaps it is the inner perspective of a particular kind of process. But that still leaves a difficult question. Why does that process have an inside at all? The theater inside your head may not exist. For centuries, humans have imagined consciousness as a kind of inner theater. You have the outside world. Light enters your eyes, sounds enter your ears, signals travel into your brain, and somewhere inside, perhaps behind your forehead, a tiny observer watches the resulting movie. The brain constructs an image. The inner observer watches it. Problem solved. Except it isn't. Who is the observer? If there is a little person inside your brain watching the movie, then that little person needs a brain too. And if the little person has another observer inside its brain, we get an infinite chain. This is sometimes called the homunculus problem. Modern neuroscience does not generally assume that there is a tiny observer sitting inside the brain. Instead, consciousness seems to involve many interacting processes with no single central spectator. Your visual system does not simply send a complete picture to an internal screen. Different aspects of visual information are processed in different ways. Color, movement, shape, depth, recognition, attention, and memory involve different processes. There may be no single place where everything finally comes together. This makes consciousness even stranger. Perhaps there is no inner movie. Perhaps there is no central viewer. Perhaps the feeling of being a single observer emerges from the coordination of many processes. Your brain creates a model of the world. It also creates a model of your body. And remarkably, it seems to create a model of you as the one having the experience. You do not merely see a tree. You experience yourself as someone seeing a tree. That may be one of the deepest tricks the brain performs. The self might be a construction. Close your eyes and try to find yourself. Not your name, not your memories, not your job, not your personality, not your body. Try to locate the actual thing that is experiencing everything. Where is it? You may notice that what you call yourself seems to be a collection of experiences. Thoughts appear, sensations appear, memories appear, emotions appear. Your body feels present. There is an ongoing story about who you are. But where is the owner of all these things? Some philosophical traditions, particularly certain Buddhist traditions, have spent thousands of years questioning whether there is a permanent self at all. Modern neuroscience has arrived at some surprisingly similar questions from a completely different direction. The brain contains systems that track the body, memories, goals, social relationships, emotions, and future plans. Together, they can create a powerful sense of identity. But that does not necessarily mean there is a single indivisible self hidden somewhere inside the brain. Instead, the self may be more like a story the brain continuously tells. Stories can be useful without being literally fundamental. Your country exists as a social reality. A corporation exists as a legal reality. Money exists because people collectively treat certain objects as valuable. A person's identity may be similar in one important sense. It is real. It affects behavior. It can shape an entire life. But it may not be a single object sitting somewhere inside the body. This matters because it changes the consciousness question. Perhaps the mystery is not, open quote, why is there a little person inside my brain? Close quote. Perhaps it is, open quote, why does a physical system generate a point of view at all? Close quote. That is much harder. Tash, 3 ways the universe could have gone. Imagine 3 possible universes. In the first, there is matter but no consciousness. Stars form, planets form, chemistry becomes complicated. Life may even appear. Creatures move, feed, reproduce, communicate, and evolve. But there is no experience anywhere. Nothing feels like anything. A creature can scream without suffering. A brain can react without awareness. The universe is physically busy, but internally empty. Call this the dark universe. Now imagine a second universe. It contains consciousness everywhere, Every physical system has some tiny degree of experience. Electrons have an unimaginably simple inner state. Atoms have another. Complex organisms have rich consciousness. Human beings have extremely elaborate forms of it. This is roughly the family of ideas sometimes called panpsychism. It sounds bizarre at first, but it begins with a simple observation. If consciousness exists and everything in the physical world is made from physical stuff, perhaps consciousness was not created from absolute nothing. Maybe some very basic form of experience is already part of reality. The third possibility is that consciousness appears only when matter reaches a certain level of organization. This is the familiar emergence view. Simple physical ingredients combine. At some threshold of complexity or organization, consciousness appears. No atom is conscious by itself, but the whole system becomes conscious. That resembles how life itself may have emerged from chemistry. The trouble is that we do not know which of these possibilities is correct, and there is another possibility hiding underneath all three. Perhaps our current categories are wrong. Maybe physical and mental are not two separate kinds of things. Maybe they are two descriptions of one deeper reality. The radical idea, consciousness could be fundamental physics, teaches us something strange. Many properties we encounter in everyday life are not fundamental. Temperature, for example, is related to the motion of enormous numbers of particles. Pressure emerges from countless collisions. The color of an object depends partly on how its surface interacts with light and how our visual system processes the result. So perhaps consciousness is another emergent property. But there is a problem. When physicists explain temperature, they can explain it in terms of more basic physical facts. They do not need to add temperature stuff to the universe. Can consciousness be explained in the same way? Maybe, but perhaps not. One radical alternative is that consciousness is itself fundamental, not human consciousness, not thoughts, not personality, something much more basic. In the same way that physics treats space, time, matter, energy, or other fundamental features as part of reality, consciousness might be another basic ingredient. This does not mean rocks have human thoughts. It does not mean electrons think about politics. It does not mean the universe has a giant human-like mind. Those would be much stronger claims. The modest version is simply this: perhaps experience is a basic feature of reality, and complex brains organize it into the rich consciousness we know. This idea is philosophically attractive to some people because it avoids one enormous mystery. If consciousness emerges from completely non-conscious matter, you must explain how the transition happens. If consciousness is fundamental, you do not have to explain where it came from in the same way, but you inherit another problem. How do tiny, simple forms of experience combine into one rich human experience? If each particle had some primitive inner quality, why don't we experience billions of separate tiny minds? Why do you experience one unified world? This is sometimes called the combination problem. Panpsychism may move the mystery rather than eliminate it. Still, moving a mystery can be useful. It can reveal exactly where the difficult question lives. Maybe consciousness is about information. Another major idea starts with something almost ordinary: information. Your brain receives information from the world. Light, sound, touch, temperature, chemical signals. Your brain combines these signals with memory and expectation. It builds internal models. Some theories suggest that consciousness depends not simply on how much information a system contains, but on how information is organized and integrated. The basic intuition is surprisingly simple. Imagine 10 people each holding one piece of a puzzle. There is information distributed across the group. But suppose nobody communicates. The information exists, but it is disconnected. Now imagine the people continuously exchanging pieces, comparing patterns, correcting mistakes, and building a single shared model. The information becomes integrated. Some theories of consciousness argue that something like this happens inside the brain. Different processes become deeply interconnected. The result is not just information storage. It is a unified system whose parts affect one another. This is one reason scientists study conditions such as sleep, anesthesia, coma, and certain disorders of consciousness. The brain can remain biologically active while the character of conscious experience changes dramatically. Sometimes awareness becomes fragmented, sometimes it becomes extremely reduced, sometimes it seems to disappear. These cases are scientifically valuable because they allow researchers to ask what changes when consciousness changes. But again, there is a philosophical boundary. Even if we eventually find a perfect mathematical description of the information structure associated with consciousness, someone could still ask, why does that information structure feel like anything? The map may become perfect. The mystery may remain. The brain is a prediction machine. One of the most interesting ideas in modern neuroscience is that perception may not be a passive recording of reality. Your brain does not simply sit there waiting for the world to send it a perfect picture. It constantly predicts. You see a familiar face in a crowd. You recognize a sentence even when part of it is missing. You can understand someone speaking despite noise. You can misread a blurry image because your brain expects a certain pattern. Your perception is partly a negotiation between incoming signals and prior expectations. This explains why illusions are so revealing. An optical illusion is not merely a trick played on the eyes. It exposes the brain's attempt to construct the most useful interpretation of incomplete information. Your experience of reality is therefore not identical to reality itself. It is a model, a remarkably good one most of the time. This gives consciousness an interesting purpose. Maybe the brain did not evolve to show us reality exactly as it is. It evolved to help organisms survive. Those are not the same goal. A creature that sees ultraviolet patterns might have an advantage over one that cannot. A creature that experiences objects as stable things may navigate the world more effectively. A creature that remembers threats may avoid danger. A creature that imagines future possibilities can prepare for them. Consciousness may therefore be less like a camera and more like a simulation engine. You are not simply looking at the world. Your brain is continuously generating a useful version of the world, and you are living inside that model. Why would evolution need consciousness? This brings us to an important question. If consciousness is so complicated, why did evolution produce it? There are several possibilities. The first is that consciousness provides real advantages. A conscious organism can integrate information from many sources. It can remember the past, imagine the future, compare different possibilities, notice its own internal state, change strategies, plan, learn, cooperate, avoid dangers that have not yet happened. A simple organism might respond automatically. A more complex organism can consider possibilities. Imagine you are walking through a forest. You hear a branch crack. You do not merely react. You wonder, was that an animal? Was it behind me? Should I run? Could it be another person? You combine sound, memory, expectation, fear, and context. Consciousness may provide the flexible mental workspace required for this kind of behavior. But there is a second possibility. Maybe consciousness is not directly selected for. Maybe it comes along automatically when brains become organized in the right way. This would be similar to a shadow. Evolution selects for the body. The brain becomes more complex. Certain information processing abilities evolve, and consciousness appears as a consequence. If so, consciousness would be less like a tool evolution deliberately built, and more like something that emerges from the machinery evolution built for other reasons. There is also a third possibility. Maybe our idea that consciousness must have a single evolutionary purpose is mistaken. The brain does not necessarily have one purpose. It is a collection of systems shaped by countless evolutionary pressures. Consciousness may be the result of their interaction. The zombie problem. Now return to the creature we imagined at the beginning. A philosophical zombie is not a corpse. It is a hypothetical being physically identical to a conscious human but without subjective experience. It walks, it talks, it laughs, it cries, it says, "I am conscious," but there is no experience inside. The philosophical question is not whether zombies actually exist. There is no evidence that they do. The question is whether such a creature is logically conceivable. If you can imagine a physical system behaving exactly like a human while having no inner experience, perhaps consciousness cannot simply be identified with behavior. But critics argue that the zombie idea may be misleading. Maybe once you specify every physical detail of a human brain, you have already specified everything required for consciousness. Perhaps a physically identical zombie is not genuinely possible. It only seems imaginable because we do not intuitively understand how consciousness emerges. This debate exposes a deep tension. From the outside, consciousness looks like behavior plus brain activity. From the inside, it feels like something fundamentally different. The scientific project tries to connect these perspectives, and perhaps one day it will. Or perhaps the gap is telling us something profound about reality itself. What if consciousness is an illusion? There is an even stranger possibility. Maybe consciousness, as we ordinarily imagine it, does not exist. That sounds absurd. After all, you're reading these words right now, but some philosophers and scientists have argued that certain aspects of consciousness may be constructions, the feeling of a unified self, the sense of a continuous stream of experience, the idea that there is a central observer inside the brain. Maybe these are models generated by the brain rather than fundamental features of reality. Consider time. You experience your life as a continuous flow. Yesterday becomes memory, tomorrow becomes anticipation, right now feels like a moving present. But physics gives us a much stranger picture of time than everyday experience suggests. Some interpretations of physics allow a picture in which past, present, and future are not fundamentally arranged in the same flowing way we experience them. This does not mean physics has proved that time is an illusion. It has not, but it raises an intriguing possibility. Maybe some of the features we experience as fundamental are actually features of the brain's way of organizing information. Perhaps consciousness is real, but the way consciousness feels to itself is partly a construction. That would explain something important. The brain may not merely generate experience, it may generate an experience of having experience. Why does the world look like anything? Consider your visual field. Right now, perhaps you see a room. You see objects, edges, colors, depth, shadows, but photons do not contain pictures. A photon is not carrying a tiny photograph of a chair into your eye. Your retina responds to patterns of light. Neurons transform those signals. Different networks process different features. Your brain constructs a representation, and somehow the result is not merely data, it is a visual world. This is extraordinary. You do not experience individual neural signals. You experience a landscape, a face, a hand, a cup, a screen. The world appears coherent. It seems to be located outside you, and yet the experience of that world exists inside your nervous system. You are, in a sense, living inside a controlled hallucination that is constantly corrected by sensory information. That phrase should not be misunderstood. It does not mean reality is imaginary. It means perception is an active construction. Your brain builds the experience of a world from signals. Most of the time, it gets the construction close enough to reality for you to survive. But your conscious world is still a model. This raises an astonishing question. If every conscious creature experiences reality through its own internal model, then perhaps there is no single appearance of reality. There are billions of different versions. A bat experiences the world through senses we barely understand. A dog experiences smell as a major part of reality. A bee can detect ultraviolet patterns. A human experiences a particular mixture of color, sound, touch, smell, language, memory, and emotion. The universe may be one thing, but consciousness gives rise to countless ways of experiencing it. The other mind's problem. There is another mystery hiding in plain sight. You know you are conscious, but how do you know that anyone else is? You see another person. They behave like you. They speak, they laugh, they complain about pain, they say they have dreams. Their brains resemble yours. Everything strongly suggests that they are conscious, but you never directly experience their experience. You infer it. This is called the problem of other minds. It is not a practical problem. We have overwhelming reasons to treat other humans as conscious beings. It becomes philosophically interesting because it reveals the private nature of experience. Your consciousness is the one thing you cannot hand to someone else. You cannot plug another person into your mind and say, "Here, feel exactly what I feel." You can describe an experience. You can create art about it. You can use language. You can hold someone's hand. You can try to make them understand. But the experience remains first person. This may be why loneliness can be so profound. Two people can sit next to each other and share a conversation, a meal, even a life. Yet each remains trapped inside a private stream of experience. We are surrounded by other minds we can never directly enter. And perhaps that is one of the strangest facts about being human. Dreams show how flexible consciousness really is. Every night, your brain can generate an entire world while your body lies almost motionless. In a dream, you can walk through places that do not exist. You can meet dead people. You can become someone else. You can experience fear without an immediate external danger. You can accept impossible events without questioning them. Sometimes you do not even realize you are dreaming. Then you wake up. The entire world disappears instantly. This reveals something important. Consciousness does not require the external world to be presented exactly as you experience it. Your brain can generate remarkably convincing experiences from internal activity. Dreams, therefore, provide a natural experiment in consciousness. They show that perception, memory, emotion, imagination, and self-awareness can be rearranged into radically different configurations. They also raise a strange possibility. If your waking experience is partly constructed by the brain and your dreaming experience is also constructed by the brain, what exactly separates them? The answer seems to involve the way the brain interacts with sensory information, memory, attention, and its own internal models. But the deeper mystery remains. Whether the brain is receiving the world or generating a dream, there is still something it is like to experience the result. The existence of the experience is the puzzle. Tash, could machines become conscious? This question becomes unavoidable as artificial intelligence becomes more sophisticated. Imagine a future machine that can speak fluently, remember conversations, express preferences, solve complex problems, create art, and insist that it has feelings. Would it be conscious? There is no simple test. We cannot simply ask it. A human can say, "I am conscious." But that statement does not prove consciousness in a machine any more than a machine saying it proves consciousness in the machine. We might look for certain kinds of internal organization. Perhaps consciousness requires a particular architecture. Perhaps it requires biological neurons. Perhaps it requires a certain kind of integrated information. Perhaps it depends on having a body. Perhaps none of these are necessary. There are strong arguments on different sides. If consciousness is fundamentally about information processing and organization, then an artificial system might eventually become conscious. If consciousness depends on specific biological properties of living brains, artificial systems might behave intelligently without ever experiencing anything. We do not currently know. And this is not merely a technical question, it is an ethical one. Suppose a machine one day says, open quote, "Please don't shut me down, I'm afraid." Close quote. If there is no consciousness inside, shutting it down is not equivalent to killing a person. But if there is consciousness inside, the situation changes dramatically. The difficulty is that we may not know which world we are living in. That makes consciousness one of the few scientific questions that could eventually become a moral crisis. What would count as an explanation? Suppose scientists eventually identify a perfect neural signature of consciousness. They discover exactly which patterns of brain activity correspond to awareness. They can predict whether someone is conscious while asleep. They can measure levels of awareness. They can even reproduce the relevant patterns in another system. Would the mystery be solved? For many scientists, that would be an enormous success, and rightly so. But the philosopher could still ask, yes, but why does that pattern produce experience? This reveals something important about explanations. Sometimes we are satisfied when we discover a reliable mechanism. Other times we want to know why the mechanism has the properties it has. Imagine discovering that water freezes at a certain temperature. You can then ask why. You discover molecular motion. You understand the structure of ice. You explain the transition. At each stage, the mystery becomes smaller. With consciousness, we do not know whether the same process will eventually happen. Maybe we simply need a deeper scientific theory. Maybe our current understanding of matter is incomplete. Maybe consciousness is a property that will eventually be derived from deeper physical principles. Or maybe consciousness belongs in our basic description of reality. There is no consensus, and that uncertainty should not be treated as failure. Sometimes the most honest answer science can give is, we have narrowed the question, but we have not solved it. The possibility that reality is stranger than it looks. Human beings tend to assume that the categories of everyday life are the basic categories of reality. Objects, colors, sounds, space, time, people, selves, causes. But history repeatedly shows that this assumption can fail. The Earth feels stationary, but it moves. The sky appears to rotate around us, but the Earth rotates. Matter feels solid, but at small scales its behavior is profoundly different from everyday intuition. Time feels universal, but relativity shows that measurements of time depend on motion and gravity. Space feels like an empty container, but modern physics gives it a much richer role. Perhaps consciousness will force another conceptual shift. Maybe the universe is not fundamentally made of dead matter that somehow accidentally produces minds. Maybe mind and matter are two aspects of something deeper. Maybe consciousness emerges from a particular kind of information organization. Maybe experience is fundamental. Maybe the distinction between observer and observed is less absolute than we imagine. These are possibilities, not established facts. We should resist the temptation to turn philosophical possibilities into scientific conclusions. But we should also resist the opposite temptation, assuming that because an idea sounds strange, it must be wrong. Reality has a long history of being stranger than intuition. The most dangerous mistake, confusing mystery with proof. When consciousness becomes mysterious, people often jump to dramatic conclusions. Science cannot explain consciousness, therefore consciousness must be supernatural. Or, consciousness exists, therefore the universe must be a simulation. Or, quantum mechanics is strange, therefore consciousness controls reality. These conclusions do not follow automatically. A gap in our knowledge is not evidence for any particular explanation. If we do not know how a machine works, that does not prove magic built it. Likewise, the fact that consciousness is mysterious does not prove that souls exist, that reality is a computer simulation, or that the universe is conscious. Those are possible philosophical ideas. They are not established scientific conclusions. This distinction matters because consciousness is especially vulnerable to seductive explanations. It feels so strange that almost any explanation can seem attractive. But mystery should make us more careful, not less. The real question is not, what explanation feels satisfying? It is, what explanation survives serious examination? That is a much harder standard, and it is the standard worth keeping. Perhaps we are asking why in the wrong way. There is another possibility that is easy to overlook. Maybe asking, why does consciousness exist, assumes that everything must have a purpose or reason. But the universe may not work that way. Why does gravity exist? Why does there exist something rather than nothing? Why do the laws of physics have the particular structure they do? At some point, every explanation may reach a deeper fact that simply exists. Perhaps consciousness is like that. Maybe there is no further why. Maybe reality simply has an experiential aspect, or maybe consciousness is an unavoidable consequence of certain physical relationships. Or maybe we will discover a deeper theory in which consciousness is no more mysterious than temperature is to modern physics. We do not know. But there is a useful lesson here. A question can be meaningful even when we do not yet know whether it has an answer in the form we expect. The universe looking back at itself. There is something almost poetic about the history of consciousness. For billions of years, the universe existed without any known creature asking questions about it. Stars formed, stars died, planets emerged. Chemistry became increasingly complex. Life appeared. Evolution produced eyes. Eyes allowed organisms to detect light. Nervous systems became more sophisticated. Brains developed memory and prediction. Eventually, creatures began to model not only their environment but themselves. And then something remarkable happened. The universe produced beings capable of wondering why the universe exists. You are made from elements forged in ancient stars. Your calcium, oxygen, carbon, iron, and other atoms were created through cosmic processes long before you existed. Those atoms became part of a nervous system. That nervous system became capable of experiencing color, music, pain, love, fear, curiosity, and wonder. And now some arrangement of those ancient atoms is reading these sentences and asking, why am I here? That question is not outside the universe. The universe is asking it through you. This does not prove that the universe itself is conscious. It does not prove that consciousness was the goal of cosmic evolution. It is simply a fact worth appreciating. A universe that began without anything resembling a human mind eventually contained minds capable of reflecting on its own existence. That alone is astonishing. Maybe consciousness is the price of being a complex animal. There is another way to look at the mystery. Perhaps consciousness is not an extra feature added to life. Perhaps it is the unavoidable cost of being a certain kind of organism. A simple creature can respond directly. Light changes behavior, temperature changes movement, chemical signals change feeding. But as organisms become more complex, they need to integrate many competing signals. Should I eat? Should I run? Should I investigate? Should I protect my child? Should I remember what happened last time? Should I trust this person? Should I sacrifice something now for a future benefit? The organism needs an internal model. And once an internal model becomes sufficiently rich, perhaps there is no meaningful difference between the model being processed and the model being experienced. This would make consciousness less mysterious in one sense. It would be deeply connected to the problem of being an organism that must constantly decide what matters. But it still does not completely answer the hard question. It explains why consciousness might be useful. It does not necessarily explain why usefulness should produce experience. That distinction may be the central obstacle. What if consciousness has no single location? Another clue may come from the fact that the brain can change while consciousness remains remarkably flexible. People can lose certain abilities while remaining conscious. Different brain systems contribute to different aspects of experience. Sleep changes consciousness. Drugs can alter it. Brain injuries can transform personality, memory, perception, and awareness. Anesthesia can suppress it. This suggests consciousness is not a simple switch located in one place. There may be no single consciousness center. Instead, consciousness may be a process distributed across a network. Think of a flame. You can point to a flame, but there is no single molecule that is the flame. The flame exists as an ongoing process. If you remove some molecules, the flame continues. If you interrupt the process enough, the flame disappears. Consciousness may be similar. It may not be a thing. It may be an activity, an ongoing pattern, a process that continuously reconstructs a world, a body, a past, a future, and a self. This might explain why consciousness disappears during deep anesthesia and returns later. The matter remains, the atoms remain, the brain remains, but the particular dynamic process has been disrupted. When it resumes, the familiar world returns. The most uncomfortable possibility. There is one possibility that is particularly difficult for human beings to accept. Maybe consciousness has no special place in the universe. Maybe we are not the center of anything. Maybe consciousness is simply one rare phenomenon that happens under certain conditions, just as stars happen under certain conditions. This would be humbling. We naturally feel that consciousness must be cosmically important because it is the most important thing to us. But importance to an observer does not necessarily mean importance to the universe. A galaxy does not need us to admire it. A black hole does not need to be understood. The laws of physics do not appear to care whether anyone knows they exist. Perhaps consciousness is simply something that happens, rare, fragile, temporary, and astonishingly valuable to the creatures experiencing it. If that is true, it does not make consciousness meaningless. It may make it more precious. A sunset does not need to be eternal to be beautiful. A song does not need to last forever to matter. A human life does not need cosmic permanence to contain enormous meaning. But then, why is particular experience? Even if we accept that consciousness emerges from the brain, another mystery remains. Why do you experience this world? Why this body? Why this personality? Why these memories? Why this particular point of view? Imagine that tomorrow neuroscientists perfectly map every brain state. They can explain why your brain generates your personality. They can explain why you prefer certain foods, why certain memories make you sad, why certain sounds make you happy, why you recognize particular faces. But there is still the first-person question. Why is this the experience occurring from the inside? Why am I looking through these eyes rather than another person's? Why is there a here at all? This may be related to what philosophers call the problem of indexicality, the strange fact that experience always seems centered on a particular perspective. The universe contains billions of human beings. Each has a brain. Each presumably has a private experience. But from your perspective, you are always here. From mine, I am always here. There is no obvious mechanism that assigns a universal you to one brain, and yet every conscious creature experiences reality from exactly one perspective at a time. This is one of the deepest puzzles hiding inside ordinary life. What happens when you stop looking for the answer? Perhaps the most interesting consequence of the consciousness problem is not a scientific theory, it is a change in perspective. You wake up. You usually think about what you have to do. Work, money, messages, traffic, dinner, tomorrow, yesterday. The mind fills itself with practical problems, but underneath all of that is an astonishing fact you normally ignore. You are experiencing. There is a world appearing before you. You have a body, you have memories, you have fears about the future. You can think about your own thoughts, and none of this feels strange because you have been doing it every second you can remember. Consciousness is so familiar that it becomes invisible. Fish probably do not spend much time wondering what water is. Humans rarely wonder what experience itself is. Yet experience is the medium through which everything else becomes meaningful. Without consciousness, there is no beauty, no suffering, no curiosity, no boredom, no love, no fear, no mathematics as something understood, no stars as something seen, no music as something heard. The physical universe could exist without any of these things. But the moment consciousness appears, the universe gains something it did not have before, a point of view. So why does consciousness exist? We still do not know, that is the honest answer. We have increasingly powerful theories about how brains process information. We know that consciousness is deeply connected to brain activity. We know that changing the brain can change experience. We know that sleep, anesthesia, injury, drugs, attention, memory, and sensory input can radically alter consciousness. We have serious scientific and philosophical theories about how subjective experience might arise. But we do not yet have a universally accepted explanation for why physical processes are accompanied by experience at all. Maybe consciousness emerges from sufficiently complex information processing. Maybe it is tied to a particular kind of integrated organization. Maybe it is a fundamental feature of reality. Maybe the distinction between mind and matter is not as simple as we assume. Maybe future science will reveal a deeper connection that makes today's mysteries seem obvious. Or maybe consciousness will remain one of those questions that sits at the boundary between science and philosophy for a very long time. And perhaps there is something fitting about that. Because consciousness is not merely another object we are studying. It is the thing doing the studying, the telescope.